neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism. I grew up in Lithuania in the early 2000s in a Soviet block of flats in Klaipėda. There I sometimes slept in a pigeon house. It was a tiny room within a room that my parents built within our crowded apartment. Through the window of the pigeon house I would look at what people did all day. And now I look again. People's jobs, whether chosen or not, constantly change their identity and their perception of the world. Work is a real abstraction of value, just like capital or goods. Although these abstractions are intangible, their impact is material and structural. We wake up every morning and together make them a reality. In these video essays, I depict how jobs have shaped the people I know best, my closest family members. Neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, neoliberal capitalism. In the previous video, I looked at my dad's adventures in employment and unemployment. In this one, I will focus on my aunt's complete entanglement with her job. Like my dad, most of my aunt's life was spent in Klaipėda, the port city of Lithuania that I also grew up in. Most of her jobs revolved around the sea. In contrast to my dad, she managed to maintain some form of financial stability throughout the collapse of the Soviet Union, the building of neoliberal capitalism, and the financial crisis 2008. She also took on the responsibility and unwaged care labor of raising me. And she was providing financial stability to my entire family. Work to live or live to work. Let's look at how my aunt and her work became one. Ever since she was very young, my aunt wanted to be a theater actress. She did not, however, get into the Klaipėda City Theater because of her lacking musical skills. While she could not become a professional actress, theater never fully left her life. In the 80s, she joined the local amateur theater group operating at Žvejų rūmai, a culture house built from fishermen's money. Here they did plays and New Year's gigs called eglutės for the children of the internal staff of large Soviet government-owned companies. In independent Lithuania, she joined a more serious theater group working at the same culture house. The opportunity came because an actor had decided to go pick strawberries in Sweden right before the start of touring, and my aunt already knew someone in the troupe. The practice of exporting cheap manual berry-picking labor from the Baltics and Eastern Europe to the Nordics had already started. After the tour, my aunt was offered to stay, so she did. The year was 1994 and she was 38. The chances that my aunt got were often linked to the social capital she already had or was trying to acquire. Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu defines social capital as the combination of both actual and potential resources linked to a durable network of relationships. The Soviet system always relied extensively on an informal social economy, but this did not necessarily change with the onset of neoliberal capitalism. It was just differently formalized. Your network is your greatest asset. Having internalized this rule certainly helped across the transition. With this new theater group, my aunt was working in a mix of amateurs and occasional professional actors. The amateurs, her included, were not paid. Very few tickets were ever bought by external persons, so the audience was mostly friends and acquaintances. However, around 2000 she started doing Christmas plays for children, for which she did get money. In a few restless days she would earn monthly wages. This was her self-arranged 13th salary, and she would spend it mostly on holiday gifts. One season she just wasn't invited to any place, and that was the end. This could have possibly had to do with her age. She was 52. While theater was mostly unpaid work, it had been her aspiration, and it also provided an escape from the troubles at her job and at home. So she saw it as a gift while it lasted. If my aunt really wanted to be a theater actress, she said she could be anybody but a teacher. Both of her parents were teachers, and so this was a cursed path. She got inspired by her literature classes to become a linguist. Her Russian teacher told her that she could shit in her hat if she got into Vilnius University. So she got in. The year was 1974, and she was 18. After study, she was really hoping to get a posting as a researcher in Vilnius. Instead, she got what she wanted least: a posting as a teacher in a small town. The posting decision would have been final, but her aunt, a dentist, just so happened to be fixing the teeth of the head of the education department. She changed his mind, and so my aunt got a place in Klaipėda, in a school she was previously going to. Unluckily, she got fired pretty soon after playing football with the kids while wearing a skirt. This was most unacceptable for a young female teacher in USSR. What would people think? She found another job pretty soon, but this time in a technical school next to the railway. Here she spent 4 years wholeheartedly discussing literature with students wanting to become auto mechanics. And here she also got a good taste of the Soviet modes of social reproduction. For example, it was crucial to have students' parents' workplaces written in large legible letters next to their names. The grades were then also pre-decided based on the social standing. To correct any deviations, the teacher would use the same color pen to continue working on the test after the student was done, to make sure that they got the right amount of things right. This mechanism for upkeeping social hierarchy worked consistently in the Soviet system, even if the money was more equally distributed across the stratum. After working there for 4 years, an older colleague advised my aunt to get out, child, while you still can. So she did, and never taught again. The year was 1983, and my aunt was 27. She started this job almost immediately after having escaped the school system. She got in because of a maternal leave substitution. As an inspector, she registered births, marriages, and deaths. There was plenty of emotional labor. If the relatives cried, she cried. As a master of ceremonies, she primarily got to direct numerous couples, stressed to the point of delirium, to sign their marriage papers in the ceremony hall. The pay was terribly low, but this position also allowed her to help out my parents with their marriage papers. She also learned the crucial skill of typing quickly, which she used for the rest of her life. She continued working at the city hall, it's just that the documents no longer bore the name of the Soviet Union. She worked there for 10 years in total, until 1993. When she left, she was 37. She got this job because of a conversation she had while still working at the city hall. The year was 1989 and she was 33. She was a translator at a port company's internal newspaper that was focusing on fishery and fishermen's concerns, in which she had no particular interest. The executive secretary fled to Canada while on a company ship, so my aunt became the new one. Her responsibilities were getting shit done. The company used to have their internal press reporting at the site of action. With my aunt as the new executive secretary, the administration started wondering how come all of their journalists were reporting from land. Someone had to sail. Pressed by her superior, she said her own name, hoping someone else would later volunteer. Nobody else did, so she sailed. She made more money from this trip than, as my grandfather exclaimed, he had ever seen. It was then she decided to start financially helping out my family because of the struggles she saw them in. Yet she couldn't quite find her place on land and sailed off again. The sea had a place in her life ever since. Soon after coming back, the company sank, and the newspaper was early to go. Independent Lithuania did not have the international fishing permits to make use of the large fleet, and maintenance was expensive. More generally, reusing infrastructure left over from the Soviet Union was difficult because of a mismatch in scale and because of its low competitive potential on an international level. The port company also didn't have any dedicated specialists, and its earlier supply chains were now cut off. In the middle of bickering, company property was distributed recklessly. Ships were cut to pieces and special people got special deals. This was a forecast of how national-level privatization would generally go. The environment was ripe for greedy grabs. She gave the keys and left. The year was 1994 and she was 38. She never wanted to be, and always has been. When the port company went kaput, my aunt needed work, and so she was choosing between two daily newspapers. She chose better salary. She has been working at the same newspaper for the last 30 years. Here she had to start using a computer, but besides a word processor, it never really became her comfort zone like it did for my dad. She started with writing about fishery, but soon expanded to the port, the economy, politics, and local affairs. While the newspaper focused on the city, she still got to travel quite a lot. She mostly visited other port cities and was often contained to the port area, but it nevertheless let her see much more of the world that she could not have possibly seen during the times of USSR. As a journalist, she also had invitations and passes for museums, restaurants, events, where she would often experience temporary social mobility, because these experiences were far too expensive for a large portion of the population, especially in the early independent years. She was now in full financial support of my family and took up the role of being my caretaker, for which she relied on her job and social network. I was often spending time at her workplace. She could also sometimes get informal loans for the family or tickets to events on which she would write a little opinion piece. Once her work even helped us go on a holiday trip to Turkey. These were substantial formal and informal social benefits that also kept her loyal. Next to work, she was also part of both a local maritime journalist union and the larger national one. With them, she was able to take me on trips around Lithuania with little expense. Both at the job and at the union, she also found a sense of community. For my aunt, the work-life boundary got erased. The merging of the two is part of the neoliberal form, but not exclusive to it. Yet in this form, the notions of flexibility, benefits, and community are used to entice, reward, and bind the worker. My aunt was always working on weekends and over the holidays. As a journalist, she was also a known face, which further brought work into her everyday social encounters. But this was just one of the ways in which her job had her in a permanent state of alert. The stress would sometimes make her smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. And yet all seemed stable until... Unlike my dad, my aunt was not fired. She left herself, at least officially. When asked by the editor why, she said it's for the family. They had reduced her monthly salary to 600 lite, and that was to be distributed across our entire household. In actuality, she stayed at the job but took on 3 more jobs and became her jobs were spokesperson for a local governmental institution to do with seafaring, journalist at her newspaper, journalist at another newspaper, journalist at the Transport Journal. She hated the government job because it was bullshit through and through. Graeber describes different common types of bullshit jobs and the people doing them. Most of them you can find at this particular governmental office. Her boss seems to have been a taskmaster, someone whose job is to assign other people tasks when they could manage on their own and to create new bullshit jobs. Her and other employees were flunkies, there just to be subordinate. As their primary task, they seem to be doing box ticking, meaning doing things to give an impression of doing things. Some of these were pernicious interventions into the already senseless workflows of the workplace. It was just so they could feel some sort of impact on their immediate reality. She got her resignation letter in 2 weeks before the end of contract, but was asked to stay at least until then. It is often the case that the boss does not want to see his number of flunkies reduced, since it has to do with their position in the company hierarchy. The 2 other jobs she took on were unsatisfactory, precarious, but still helped out financially. The newspaper did not continue her contract, and the Transport Journal she quit herself. The year was 2010. She never wanted to be, and always has been. After the national economy started bouncing back a bit, my aunt was able to return to work full-time at her main job. But this was now a very different kind of company. Whereas before the newspaper was operating with normal guaranteed wages, now they decided to transition into paying per article. My aunt had been working there for 10 years plus and yet immediately lost all security. Workers were furious, but nobody contacted the union, and so they either adapted or left. The change, of course, pumped up the internal competition and increased the speed of delivery. It also reduced quality and added the additional unpaid labor of self-supervising and tracking. This was free market logic, baby. Those ready to work off their asses could earn more, and those lagging behind would be left behind. Higher risk, higher reward, no security. Of course, this also had to do with digitalization and the increasing importance of rapid reporting online. Online, the buffer time between writing an article and publishing it is reduced almost to a paradoxical 0. And yet my aunt writes still. Writes as much as she possibly can. My aunt said she would be writing until my dad's pension, but now they are both getting it and she continues regardless. What is there to do otherwise, she says. She has a type of rare neurodegenerative illness called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis that makes her motoric neurons continuously deteriorate, so she's typing from home. She used to go to work with crutches for as long as she could. Now she has a new desk that can be raised or lowered and a new chair for sitting comfortably. Both she got with some financial social support. Both my dad and my mom are helping her out. Quite recently she was rewarded for her contribution to journalism. This was recognition for a life spent typing. Marxist theorist Jason Reed points out that in capitalism, work always already functions as an ideology. This is because it is so entangled with the most immediate aspects of our lives. like suffering, striving, needing, and desiring. So much so that it appears not as an institution, but as a fact of life. And so labor relations produce subjectivity as much as they produce commodity. David Graeber names two ways in which people generally find their jobs useful. They get the money that is needed to sustain their existence, and the job produces some sort of social value. My aunt's job sustained not only her, but my entire family. As for social value, she can tell numerous stories of the ways reporting had an immediate impact on people's lives. Yet usefulness is not enough to fully describe the deep ideological binding with work. Here, work is taken as a virtue in itself. Under capitalism, honesty of work seems to many to at least give them a fighting chance, as my aunt herself put it. While total alienation from work drains any sense of meaning, and precarity might make you desperate and dejected, the sort of close entanglement with work also puts you at risk of exploitation under changing value systems. When a mechanism of profit optimization is reconfiguring your sense of meaning, what sort of leverage do you really have? And so it is worth asking who my aunt might have been if she wasn't her work. If work constructs identity, then how can it still structure the life of somebody placed generally outside of the sphere of employability? How does religious practice and housework constitute a form of work? In the next video, I look at my mom's life. See you next time at the Pigeon House.
Oh, Dad.